Well, good morning, good
Good morning
afternoon, good evening, good night,
and good night. Yes.
and good night, wherever you are. Welcome to Where's the Balance, a podcast, thoughtcast of two regular Canadians that talk about the subjects of the day or whatever pops into our little bee brains. I'm Rawle James,
And
and
I'm Randall Keays, and this is episode 6, man.
thanks. We're
6.
climbing the ladder.
We are. I mean, this was, what the hell are we gonna do? Where's this gonna go? And here we are in 6, trying to figure out, what the next 60 could look like.
I think if we get to 100, we'll probably be saying the same thing.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Absolutely.
But it is. I mean, it kind of fits the times. Things change so quickly now, and the main reason for where's the balance is not saying which side is wrong. Is trying to understand where's the middle ground, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground being strived for these days.
No, it is a left versus right. And it doesn't matter who's left and who's right and who's left, because that can change day to day too, as we've seen. And there seems to be a lack of willingness to be cohesive. Let me use the word compromise. Pardon me. We've all had things happen. We've all been exposed or lived through different things in our lives, but yet my left and your right are very, very different, and yet you and I can walk the same path.
Yeah.
Right. And we're just not seeing that across the world.
No, we're not. And to me, and to add to that point, it's not necessarily about being left or right, because I can hold two positions at the same time.
Absolutely.
I could be pro police and pro Black Lives, or pro transgender, whatever. It doesn't have to be one or the other, depending on the policy or depending on what comes down. Does it make sense? Is it well researched and then well positioned, and does it have meat and substance to it?
Absolutely. And further to that, you are allowed to change your mind.
Well, yeah. And now we live in a society well, you had this opinion 10 years ago. Well, that was 10 years ago. I'm allowed to change, evolve, and grow. That's what evolution is about. Absolutely. Moving forward.
I don't think act and behave the same way I did when I was 5, right? It's 30 plus years ago. I'm going to have a different opinion on the world than I did then. I mean, that's just what we do.
It would be a sad state of affairs if you
would totally be
as a 5-year-old. But it seems like many people are, to some degree. Yeah, I said it. That's right.
You said it. And I will cheers to that, man.
I said it. There's too many people acting like not even teenagers. We know teenagers and children don't fully know and understand, and they're growing and developing, but we're supposed to be adults. And, we teach these young ones. I think I mentioned it in one of our previous episodes. We encourage young ones to participate in events that will teach them around, character and develop character, and how to collaborate and work together, and how to come together and strive for the common goals and all these things. And these are life skills that we tell them that will benefit them as they get older. And now they're older. I'd be questioning, where's all the cooperation? Where's the...
Well, and you see, therein lies a question, not for you, not for me, for our audience, for our folks who may watch this, for our friends and those that will agree and disagree with us who are listening, all of the above. When we're teaching, you have kids, they're older. I have kids, they're younger. But
not much younger.
No, that's right. But when we're teaching, and this is a serious thought stop for the parents that are out there with children of all ages, when teaching children to, adulting 101, if you may, are you teaching the world? Or are you teaching your point of view?
Right.
Because what is that breeding in the long structure, right? Like what if your kid is, I mean, we all rebel against something. We always have, and that's part of finding who you are. But if let's just use politics for an example. In Canada, right, we have 5, and there's the big 3, and big 2 plus 1. But if you grew up in a house of, NDP, and that's all your parents ever voted was NDP, because that's where they worked, that's what they did, they were union people, blah 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 blah, are you having that conversation with your kid or your children or your soon to be voters in your house as to like, okay, this is why I always vote this way, because this government favors the organization I work for, versus this government makes different decisions, or, you know, the differences between them all, because they all have differences. So when it comes to teaching, and you and I have talked about this lots before, when it comes to teaching, are you teaching more than one side of a story?
Yeah, because there is more, and truth has three sides, not two.
Mm-hmm.
Like a coin. Everyone thinks a coin only has two sides. Coin has three sides. Right?
Absolutely
There's heads, there's tails, and then there's the edge.
Yep.
Truth is the same way. There's your truth, my truth, and then the truth. And it seems now, two things to add to what you're saying. A lot of people think governance is easy. It is not easy to govern, especially when you have so many voices, so many perspectives.
Yep.
I accept that my perspective is limited because I am looking from the inside out. I can't see behind me. So this thing about I have a 360 view. No, I have a 360 view when I step out of my perspective and start educating myself on other perspectives. And
as you said in the last show, right? Seek to understand.
And then you can come back in and say, okay, what I've just absorbed, how does it really fit with the perspectives, the values that I hold? When we talk about perspectives, really about what values do you hold individually? What values do you hold as a family unit? What values hold as a community, as a country, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're allowed to change your mind.
And again, you're allowed to change because we are free.
That's right.
Supposedly free. But you and I were talking before we started recording about, I was joking with Randall Kendall. He was sitting waiting to get into the Zoom, and I was sitting there go, yeah, I just wanted you to sit because I want complete control of your life. And he jokingly goes, well, I might give up some control, depending, blah, blah. But all joking aside, there's many people that just fully would prefer someone else making the decision in regards to how they live their lives.
Always.
And, I think, is it Zuby, the rapper politician out of when we did his 21 points. And one of the points was he was amazed, and the 21 points coming out of COVID, what he realized and learned. One of them is how quickly people are willing to be fully compliant and to impose that on other people. And, to me, that's one of the greater things that's going on right now. We're so caught up in these politicized issues. What I mean by that, the transgender, the LGBTQ plus whatever it is agenda, to me, has been hijacked. Black Lives Matter was hijacked. Women's issues has been hijacked and politicized because the politician use it now as means to energize their base, pro or con, in their favor to be elected. And yet when they get elected, we're not seeing a tremendous amount of change in things. We're seeing one-sided stories right now. So where most people still get their news or get their information from the news and social media, we're seeing a one-sided reporting on these platforms. So what exactly are you arming yourself with?
And here's a good point. Here, I'm going to take this contextually to a fun place. So this goes to, willing to do your own fact checks, and maybe you're doing it, you don't even know you're doing it. So, for example, it was believed for a very long time that George Jetson of the TV show The Jetsons' birth date was July 31st, 2022.
Oh yeah, I think
right. So I saw this shared on social media. One of my aunts shared it. I thought it was kind of funny. I had my cousin is a cookum now, right? She just had her very first grandbaby, and it was I think it was on the 31st. And so I thought, oh, how ironic, She and I watched the Jetsons all the time as a kid. We had all these fun futuristic conversations, and
we went from the Stone Age to the Jetson Age.
Flintstones, right? The Flintstones and the Jetsons, 100%. And so I thought, oh, hey, somebody shared this July 31st, 2022. Well, that's pretty ironic for a show, but hey, maybe it's not.
Right.
And it was just like a screen clip, like a screenshot of a wiki article almost. So I just searched up, fact checked myself before I like jump in on sharing something and thinking, hey, this is going to be really cool and really fun. And it's all it says is in one show, he says something about July. So it was latched onto. And 2022 was the date of the show. And so there was no exception to 2022. There's a brief somewhere in one of the episodes where July comes into the conversation, but it's never been quoted July 31. So through my own, just curiosity, I was able to fact check this thing to like, okay, July 2022, I could roll with this, but really it's 2022. And I'll just take that as a global statement. It's not specifically July 31st. Yeah. But it was a fun and easy way, just a quick Google search tells me what I was looking for with just a few different things, right? Because I was just looking for a pretty general idea, is this right? Or do enough people agree with this? It's fun and it's a cartoon and it's nostalgic. Yeah, so it was interesting, right? But I mean, it was like, I think people
that came out what was it this mid 60s, late 60s, early 70s, something like that.
Yeah. And
so
ran
it's fun
for
to look at that and go, how much
is?
Well, it's kind of the same with Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek.
Yep.
When you look at Star Trek, because I remember watching, the original shows being aired, not reruns that most kids grew
I'll
up
leave
with.
you stand on the Star Trek topic all by yourself. I'm nope.
Well, I'm not a Trekkie in that regards, but I watched it as a kid. I know some things, but it's just the point is when you look at the vision that created that show to where we are today.
We are not in flying cars. We are not living in towers.
Not everything, but there's a lot of things we're doing.
Absolutely.
William Shatner had hosted a show that looked at what came from Star Trek, the technology. And a lot of it has come to pass. Like in the just in case, we're not driving and it's in little spaceship cars and stuff. But there's a lot of technology. We all have. Beam me up, Scotty. The only thing it doesn't do is transport us wherever we go. But to me,
but hold on. It does. It doesn't physically transport you wherever you want to go. But I mean, buddy, we're in two different time zones.
Yeah.
And here we are right in this moment, right? I mean, where you're staring at a box on our desk right now.
Using the Zoom software to be able to connect and bring this, to the masses or the masses or the two
or
people
the
that may watch this or the But either way, I mean, but that's been constant in our human evolution. If you go back and you look at history, technology plays a great role in how we advance.
Absolutely. I mean, medicine, life, right? Like that in and of itself. We're not forcing women to get married at 12 and children by 14 because they're going to die at 24. Yeah. Right. That might still happen, but they're not dying at 24 anymore.
Well,
as a regular,
it happens. It's not the norm like it used to be, and that's the thing with life. We address a lot of the ills from the past, and we expect to fully eliminate things, and some things get eliminated over time. People values change. The more we interact with each other, the more we live in these catchment areas where you have, a variety of mindsets, a variety of values, a variety of cultures, a variety of economic practices in regards to how we live. And when everyone comes in, it's going to change the landscape of
absolutely,
because everyone is adding their 2 cents into it. In this sense, not is the old saying, too many chefs,
not enough cooks,
right? But in this case, everyone is adding into this global stew that we're making because look at how we live. Now, how we live, that's another conversation that we can look at. Do we still need to live in cities this size and that sort of thing? But then again, that's been a constant. And I think that's one of the big things that's going on in society today. The question is, whether LGBT, women's rights, Black, whatever issues, Indigenous, the question is, Are we ready to take the next step in our human evolution? And are we
and
ready
and
to
and
let technology under our guidance help us climb that evolutionary ladder?
under our guidance,
Under
keyword.
our
And
guidance.
I'm not trying to circle back, but when
Nope.
you and I were talking before about control,
Mhm.
or willing to give up control.
Mhm.
And I loved your statement there. And I just to pause on that, under our guidance, we are in control of ourselves, our thoughts, our environments, the areas we put ourselves into, the things that we do, because we control ourselves. We
And
can't
this is
control
why,
other people, but then as soon as you pick up a device, or as soon as you open your laptop, or as soon as you jump on a call with people who are not like-minded or whatever, and you are challenged,
Mhm.
you have to think about where you're at, right? It's
And
not a left and right anymore. Now it's oh, there's a different
yeah.
perspective I didn't see, right? And being able to talk through that. We have these gigantic computers in our pockets, and we can't even have a freaking conversation.
We have a gigantic computer on top of our heads, and we don't. This is why I always push in these sort of times, and all times, but in these sort of heightened times, when we talk about control, one of the main reasons people want to try to control others and their decisions and how they live life is because they don't want to take full control of themselves. And when you think about it, as an individual, as a person, as a man,
Mhm,
the only thing I have control over is me, my
mhm,
thoughts,
mhm.
and not even all of my thoughts. A lot of them just show up. What I do have control over, excuse me, what I do have control over is which thoughts I add to my internal dialogue that's going to sit there and ruminate. Which thoughts do I then put into the world? That's all I really have control over. I can't even control my kids and how they think, right? So the illusion of control is really, can you control yourself and stop worrying about others? And these types of environments where we have all these social heightened issues
Mm.
really is asking you, before you address those, and it's not that we shouldn't address social issues, but before you address those, are you good with you?
Mhm.
Are you really understanding who you are, what it means to love and like yourself? What are you really worthy of?
Or is this just the next freaking bandwagon because you're feeling like something's missing in your life, and this
Yeah.
sounds like a good thing to ride out?
Well, it is the bandwagon. I mean, when we look at talk about bandwagon, when we look at these so-called self-help gurus and all these great speakers, they monetize wisdom, and yet where are we today? We've had those charlatans in the past
Mhm.
before doing the same things. We have politicians doing the same thing. So my thing is, to the average person, it's time to wake up.
And not be woke, but actually
Woke
wake
is a
up.
woke is a very scary agenda to me.
I personally brought this up because I love your opinion of the woke people. So
Yeah.
please
Well, to
continue.
me, woke is the radical left, the beyond the fringe of the left, where Marxism and communism hangs out. Most people don't realize that. And it's funny you brought that up, because I was looking. We'll get into the. I want to go to the news headlines in a bit, but when I look at the 10 kind of points of Marxism, of communism, abolishment of property and law and application of all rentals of land to public purpose, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax, to abolish all rights of inheritance, confiscation of all property, period, particularly of those that they consider rebels and against the state. There's a long list. The dismantling of the nuclear family, right? Free education to all children in public schools, abolishment of children's factory labor. Obviously, I remember when this was written, but although that last point is still prevalent in other parts of the world, not so much
Sure.
here.
Yes.
Combination of education with industrial production. Well, that's actually what we're doing as well today. And our education system has always been in line with industrial production. So when I look at this, and then, when Black Lives Matter first came out, on their about page, they basically had copied and pasted a lot of the Communist Manifesto points: elimination of the nuclear family, basically discouraging men out of the family unit, right? The complete empowerment of women, which women have been very much empowered over the last 50 years against the still narrative that women are suffering. I don't buy this nonsense. Depending, when you look, if you break down the numbers, they're still using the argument women are making 71 cents versus men. That's a lie, right? And when you break it down, now that number has shrunk so much, and even the difference can not be justified, but can be explained because women overall make different choices than men. Women have a different version of how to live life. When women use the blanket argument, well, why aren't there more chief executive officers as women? It's because not many women want to climb that level. And it's not that they can't, they don't want to. A lot of men don't want to climb to that level because it is such a tedious and all-in climb. It takes very few people, very few have that kind of mental makeup, that really alpha dominant male kind of makeup that want to do that.
Yeah, and further to that, many people, right? I mean, many people who have tried the climb realize through the climb, the time, the energy, or the complete self-sacrifice it takes. You are no longer who you thought you were. If you are an alpha dominant type of individual, male or female, you're going to just throw boulders because you can, right? Like that's just, you're gonna be the rolling stone in every situation because that is who you are. You're gonna pause in other ones and just go, nope, this fight's not for me, but you course correction and continue on, right? Where many people, that is a lot of self-service to something that you have zero control over.
Zero control. And then when you look at certain industries, certain professions, women are dominating. Women are making more than men.
One of the organizations I worked for, more women worked there than men did.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking a Canadian. It was the national office for Canada. It was the corporate office for Canada. The world headquarters was in the States, but even there, right? Every person I ever had to talk to there was a female. So yeah. The industry I was in, sure, there are elements of industry specific individuals or industry specific or not even specific, just gender norms within specific industries, right? Where females may be more predominant than males, or vice versa, but in the industry that I have been in for far too many years, there's always been more women than men.
Yeah, and then then we muddied the waters with patriarchal society and male dominance and all this stuff, and it's like, this is why I've definitely become a fan of Jordan Peterson. I still don't agree with everything he says, but I like the fact too he's well researched. He's a clinical psychologist, and part of his job is to research. That's why I like Thomas Sowell as well. They research. Yeah, I love Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell is is like an unofficial mentor of mine. I don't always agree with everything he says, but one of the reasons I listen to him because I know he's well researched, and he puts the research there for me to look at, and then go, and then says, you go find out further. Don't just take it for what I says. He always says, what do I know? All I have is facts.
Yeah.
And fact and data have become the new 4-letter words.
Right.
It's become the new 4-letter word.
Yep.
Questioning is now somehow a phobia. We're
not allowed to doubt. We're not encouraged to doubt.
Well, we're not even allowed to represent ourselves the way we want. This thing about pronouns and all this nonsense that we're doing now today. And I said nonsense. You have a problem with it? Come talk to me. Come ask me. Because I think it was when Jenny was on, I was in I don't know if I recited that poem about the situation where I got kicked out of a room. Because if you look at my Zoom, it says human male. human and male somehow is now transphobic. But yet yesterday, a friend of mine sent me an article from someone that wrote in the Huffington Post, take that for what you will, where someone was talking about pronouns and now how they've gone from all these pronouns and now coming back to, well, we're just human. That's what mine says. But yet I was kicked out of a room because of that. No conversation, wasn't even asked a question. I received a statement in the form of a text, basically saying, remove it or we'll ask you, or we'll kick you out. No questioning whatsoever. And the automatic assumption was that I am transphobic. And now what, I'm supposed to stand up and posture and say, well, look at all the work I've done. Who the hell are you? You are now wanting to mess with the English language.
That's
which
control.
we use because we need language to still communicate. But also, you're messing.
I mean, hey, I mean, if you want to go back to cuneiform and papyrus sheets, I mean, we could do that and just draw pictures all day. I mean, we could go that far back.
So I look at our humanity, our walk as humans versus other walks of other species on this planet. And there is a clear distinction between male and female. Now they're going to say, well, it's a construct that we created. We created the words to define things so we can understand. We have a common understanding of things, but not to be used blatantly because you just feel. And that's the problem I have with all of this that's going on. There's feelings versus facts. And if we're just moving on feelings, this is why things feel so helter-skelter right now. Because then what about my feelings? Why does your feelings trump mine? Why 100%. Does your use of pronouns trump mine? And mine are not pronouns. Mine is just how I see myself as a human. I am human and I am male.
Wait, is that data in fact?
That is a fact from how I was educated and studied for millennia of understanding. Yeah, now, if you want to tell me that gender has been misunderstood because of scientific studies, proof, I'm all ear. I'm all ear. But don't tell me you have nothing to back it up, it's just feelings. And now we're just jumping. I've been watching a lot of various videos of young people who have transitioned and now detransitioning. I saw a story of a man, trans man, who transitioned when he was 42 and talked about how when he transitioned, he thought whatever mental issues he had, the way he saw himself and would change, it didn't change anything. And he said, my story is not that uncommon because he's become a big advocate against this woke transgender. I'm all for people who feel inside, what do you think is a mental issue or not, that inside they're in the wrong body. There was a time my son Zen thought, it's either he thought or his mom thought he was transgender. But what this gentleman was saying, and I say gentleman because he identifies as a gentleman, but he also tells you, I'm not a biological man. Mm-hmm. I have respect for that. He goes, I identify as a man. I live as a man. My girls now know me as a man. But he goes, I am not a biological man. And he was saying, when they're that young, you don't know. Let them grow. And when they have acquired some life skills, if you're still feeling that way, you can deal with that. But there's ways to deal with that. And we should deal with it. But absolutely. Now this epidemic, why I say epidemic?
Yes.
So I was watching a woman who has been following the transgender issue for the last 10 years or so. And she came across a study that's been going on for the last 100 years around gender dysphoria. 100-year study that's still going on to this day. And what that study has shown, the gender dysphoria is common, is more prevalent in young boys. Very, very small percentage in young girls. And the young boys, young teens, a lot of them grew out of it. A number of them are gay. Some do transition. That was always a small number compared to the greater population. Over the last 10, 15 years, it jumped from young boys into young girls, teenagers, young teen girls, which is a phenomenon in itself. So then they've been studying and looking and going, if it's jumping from male to female, then it should also be happening to adult males to adult females. That's not happening. It's only happening in this age. So you go, well, what's going on that's prompting this big exodus? Because now the majority of what you're hearing from transgender is young girls, teenagers. The majority. It's like an epidemic now. The numbers are just ballooned, skyrocketed, and yet you've had this study over 10 years. Now, studies aren't absolute everything because not everything is reported, but it gives you a baseline of something to start from. So why this big jump, number one, from one gender to the next? It's not affecting any adults. It's in the small demographics of our humanity. And now we're seeing this epidemic of young ones transitioning. But you're not hearing about the ones who transition, which is alarmingly high, that try to transition back. Listening to some of their stories and the horror stories, because they're mutilating their bodies. They can't go back, and some things you just can't undo. So this gentleman was saying, he goes, they're telling you that if you don't transition these kids, suicide rates are going to be high. They're going to rise. And he goes, there's no data to support that because it's still too soon. He goes, but there is a suicide epidemic coming from the ones that have transitioned or detransitioning. He goes, this is going to get nasty and ugly. So
I mean, that in and of itself, wow. You and I have talked lots about lots of different things over our, I don't even know how long, doesn't matter. Unimportant. It's a long time. It's a good time. If we were seeing, food for thought, if we were seeing specifically, you know, where your whole statement here started with young boys who are spending an awful lot of time with mom, right? That whole nature and nurture and raising and children. I mean, that there's jobs in this story too, right? There are gender norms and gender specifics that happen here because children can only come one way. Even in a petri dish, it can only come one way. There must be a sperm and there must be an egg. So these young children are spending time more so with mom, right? If we're going to use nuclear family statements here, if we take all of that and we look at the last, well, we can look at forever, but let's look at the last 100 years, right? We're going to follow along with what you were going on here. Dad's always working or must work, right? It's not often dad's at home. We're seeing that transition happen too, right? In the work world, fathers taking their parental leave and taking more of the parental leave. We're seeing that. So I've got some interesting thoughts going on here. Is this transition, is this jump, is this change in values in the last 10 years because societal norms have changed from mom's home for, okay, so in Canada, mat leave is a year long. Right? Many other places, it's 17 weeks or 6 months. If you adopt, it's drastic. It's only 17 weeks. It's just the maternity portion of parental leave. That being said, is the last year's change because we have seen a societal flip to it's okay for dad to stay home with the baby. It's normal now, right? We're accepting that it doesn't have to always be mom because it never always had to be. It never did.
No, it didn't.
However, when we're looking at specifically young children and when lacking, and not necessarily lacking, but when you spend the greater portion of your day with mom, are you going to feel more familiar or more in touch with that feminine energy than the masculine energy because it's not as prevalent in your hours of the day that you are awake? Right, we're not 10-year-old boys going out to hunt on our rite of passage, you know, with all the male of the clan, right? We're not that society anymore. long gone, right? For the I'm generalizing. Yes, there are certainly still cultures and ethnicities out there that is still a very big part of their life. I respect that. But in a generalized statement, we live in bigger cities, not rural communities. We're not near as participant in how the whole family functions, right? We have our free education, being told what to learn from the government control, right? But when we bring it to what you're talking about, is it, first of all, the lack of masculine energy? And I want to use that because, I mean, you made the comment, he's not a biological male. And if somebody truly did feel the way they did and they transitioned and are very happy with what they did, and I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to raise awareness either way, I'm just asking questions, right? If there's a lack of masculine energy, we can only assume there would be a heightened amount of feminine energy,
I
right?
don't know.
Yin and yang are only in balance for so long, or they're out of balance, right?
I don't know. I mean, up until the 70s, majority of women were still home raising their children, and so those children, male or female, were surrounded, you know, by that feminine energy, and yet we didn't see a massive spike or a switch in gender like we do since the last 20 years.
Yes, but in the last 20 years, and more specifically the last 10, we're seeing more fathers taking that parental leave. We're seeing more fathers work from home or taking different kinds of jobs that allow them to be home more frequently.
We do, but the majority still, it's funny, the nuclear family, as much as we're fighting it, the majority still functions where the women are the ones who are the main nurturer. Fathers have always been involved, and more fathers have gotten involved. That's why I'm saying you have to have numbers. Now, this study, I don't know. So I'm not going to say,
yeah.
I don't know if that is a component that was looked at in this study. All I know is this woman who spent years hunting down research around this subject, even the scientists involved found that to be a very interesting anomaly. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. And I would assume they're going to want to study it further to find out the breakdown.
Well, for sure. They've already invested 100 years in it. Why not another 100 more?
Well, right? Yeah, exactly. So obviously this is something that some scientists back in the day thought it was important to start a study, and others have carried on that work since then. So I don't know what they're going to do. I was just, to the best of my knowledge, regurgitating what I understood from listening to her, and then even like this trans gentleman spoke of. I think ultimately, we're seeing a politicized agenda around this subject. It's the same thing with race. One of the things I told her I wanted to do is when we look at the top stories in Canada right now.
Yes. Let's jump to this.
Top stories in Canada today.
Ooh, how very, what's that guy's name? And now for the rest of the story, Paul. I don't know. Doesn't matter. All good.
I was thinking more Knowlton Nash from back in the day, or Peter Mansbridge, or I don't know. Anyway,
I liked Peter Mansbridge. I really did.
I didn't mind Peter. I didn't mind him. I was kind of a Barbara from kind of when CBC was still CBC. So
yes. Okay.
Maybe it never was. I don't know. Anyway,
maybe it never was. Canada Post, Crown Corps. Maybe it never was.
No, maybe it never was. Top stories in Canada. So from the Global, and this is all online. So the Global News, hate crime reports surged during COVID. In 2020 to 2021, it went up 27%. It's gone up, they said, 72% over the last 2 years, right?
72% of what? See, right now hold on. I'll back off. You have more to go through.
I didn't go down the rabbit hole. I'm just pulling out the top stories, because this is what people tend to do. They look at most, not all, look at the top stories, think they're informed. It's like back in the day. Oh, let's just grab a Wall Street Journal and put it in our briefcase to make it look like we're doing no business. And all we did was read the headlines so we could sound intelligent. And
that's right. Sitting in the corporate office, reading the business section of the Globe and Mail, just so that we kind of have a clue. Anyway.
CTV was the top story was a residential school survivors story. Inflation in Canada after the pandemic. Where are the workers? Real estate, historic housing correction coming, says RBC, Royal Bank of Canada.
Yeah,
Pope
they say
Francis
that's not happening in Saskatchewan, by the way, but
Yeah. Pope Francis, Saskatchewan, sorry. Pope Francis in Canada apologize for the residential schools. CBC, the snowbird plane accident, which was unfortunate in northern BC, so they've canceled.
I missed that, but that is unfortunate.
Nancy Pelosi in Taiwan. National sexual assault rate up since 1996. From the National Post, our boy Pierre raised more dollars than his opponents. When I say Pierre, our boy, is just that someone I like what he says. Pierre, what's his last name again?
Olivier.
I knew it.
It's a tough one. I mean, even I'm like, it starts with a P and ends with an E, and there's a bunch of O's, U's, and R's in between.
I found this one interesting. This was on CBC on the front page. Reports show Trudeau offered portraits of himself as gift.
Oh God, I've seen that one. That was awful.
Many times. I haven't seen that one. So like I said, I stay away a lot from corporate news. And then there was just a few of the hundreds of residential school photos found in Rome archives.
Yeah.
So apologizing for something, you're acting like, oh, we didn't know it was happening. It's a lie. Called for apologies for slavery in Canada because August 1st was Emancipation Day here in I don't know if it's in Canada or in Ontario. So now there's some Blacks that are pushing for Canada to apologize to Black people for slavery here in Canada. So I found some of these stories interesting. Next time I do this, there's the alternative news organization. I want to see what their top stories are. I find it interesting that inflation is a big one, and yet it's not really mentioned much.
Well, because here's the thing, we know, and sorry, Emancipation Day is Canada, not just Ontario. It's the abolishment of the Slavery Act in Canada.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know that was.
I just had to look up Emancipation Day 22, and I got my quick little blurb about it. But that came and went without my knowledge. We call August 1st in Saskatchewan Day.
I thought it was Family Day. So
no, ours is in February. But say la vie. Where I was going initially with this, right? We set up 72%, or you said, and I said 72% of what? And I'm like, well, wait, stop. And you said, not the rabbit hole. There is, and I'll find it somewhere. I'll have to look for it. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's a marketing fact that when you include numbers, specifically percentages, the population doesn't argue because numbers don't lie. Well, numbers don't lie if you know what numbers were used to get to the figures. But if you don't know what numbers were used, then numbers are a marketing gimmick.
Yeah. That's what Thomas Sowell talks about. He goes, yeah, your numbers may say that, but when I go into the numbers, that's not the truth.
Now, and I want to substantiate one other one too. And not, maybe not substantiate it, but I can see.
You better have numbers to substantiate that.
That's right. I don't have numbers, so I'm not substantiating. I could support the narrative, let's say. Right, we have assaults up over the last 2.5 years. We have addictions up over the last 2.5 years. We have all these other things, but you know what? There's suicides on the rise now. I mean, suicide in specific age groups, nations, parts of each province across the world for a variety of reasons. We know overall that suicide rates in men are higher than in women, adult men.
You read my mind. I was just going to say it's almost like an attack on men these days to ignore men, ignore men's health, everything. But that's actually, I think that even men's suicide rates are higher than teenagers, right?
Yep. And there's a lot of worthy organizations who like to promote the real facts behind the rates of suicides in males, but it is predominantly higher than those that are female. If I can use those as a pronoun here. Wow. I'm not trying to buy in. I'm just trying to play friendly in this moment anyway.
That's a sad state of affair that you now have to justify
and that wasn't a justification. That was bad.
No, not you.
The world does.
You have to use a pronoun, which is grammatically part of our English language. And now you have to find a way to, oh, I'm sorry, I said he or she. This is the craziness. Anyway, sorry.
Yes, sorry. We know all these numbers are higher, but let's stop. And when the media, and this one gets me, and it really bothers me because many people live with many different types of mental health. And I'm just going to leave it at mental health because there's disorders and illnesses and there's so much to it.
So much to it. Yeah.
There's so, and it covers such a depth of everybody's lives. I mean, we talk about, generational traumas and stuff. Well, we come back to mental health, right? Like there's lots of pieces inside of that. But when we know that mental health is something that so many people deal with, and we know that the rates of suicide among males is higher than that of females, and then when the media, so much has happened over the last 2 years, violent crimes are up, sexual crimes are up, these things are up, addictions are up, all of these things are higher. Well, they were high in certain categories before a pandemic, but the moment the world closed its doors and said, don't fucking go anywhere, we didn't know what to do with the energy. We didn't know what to do with the thoughts. We lost access to so many services because I don't know what it's like in Ontario, say for counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, but I know in the provinces.
We had that issue trying to find a counselor during the pandemic. It's impossible.
Yep. We found one near the tail end, and he said he had been seeing patients in person kind of the whole way through because he recognized some people just need to get out of their house, and some people the safe place is out of their house, right? So I mean, this even comes back to why kids go to school. And I mean, I'm an inner city kid, so I know why some kids came to school, right? School was safer, or that's where they got their meal, or that's where they right, like eat.
Yep.
Right. So you take all of the support resources away from every household, or as many of them don't go visit. Limit your circle, limit your friends, limit this, limit that, right? Well, naming whoever is your nuclear family, if it's not your parents, but it's somebody else's or whatever, right? Like whoever was in your circle before, now you can't see them. Well, no shit, things are going to happen.
Yeah.
We've all got pent up energy and don't know what the hell to do with it. We're all dealing with either ourselves or somebody very close to us through something within mental health or physical health, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're all fighting something.
Yeah.
But we were all fighting the same thing, just on different sides of the coin, being that one's fighting and telling everybody do what the government says, and the other one is saying I can't do what the government says. And there was reasons for, I can see all sides of it, and my perspective isn't just to try sway anybody's. It was those that were still going out and still seeing people and still doing the thing. That was and very well could have been the very thing they needed to do in order not to jump off the cliff.
Yeah, and it could be, but once again, we don't know. We generalize. When I see reports or stories like this that use these numbers, well, hate crime is up 27%, was up 27% in 2020, 2021. Okay, then that's what it was up. If it was low, it's only got one place to go, but up. Mm-hmm. So telling me 27%, that doesn't really mean anything.
And came back to my first when you were saying it. Yeah. 72% of what?
Of what? And then we live in at least here in Canada, well, we have a prime minister that's supposedly woke, but yet supports racist rhetoric in his own speech that he uses. So, excuse me, should we be blaming Justin Trudeau like most people like, even if you ask a lot of Canadians why hate crimes up, Trump. They'll say Trump. Trump is the reason why, because Trump, the way he spoke, gave license to people. Yeah, some people listen to the Trump say some idiotic things and then chose to act. But it's still not Trump's fault.
But herein lies that problem, right? It doesn't. This is history repeating itself over and over and over again. It takes a small few to move to the extreme, and the extreme gets tagged back to the one that said it was misinterpretation or.
This is what all of this is to me. We keep looking at the bad apples and saying it's all the apples. my thing is, I have a prime minister that uses language, or have used, not all the time, but I've heard him say things that are just cringing. You don't think it contributes to this number as well? 'Cause
Totally.
if you're going to use that other argument, then you have to apply to this argument as
Yeah,
well. So this is why I
for
go,
sure.
I don't care what they say. You still have control over you. And I accept in this world that I live in, there are people that have bad intentions and their ignorance clouds their judgment and they do stupid things. But that's not the mass majority. That is not. And the news is sensationalizing, to your point, when they put numbers in like that and don't justify it. Now, I'm just looking at the
Yes.
headlines. The article might have addressed that, but I find when I go into some of these articles, they don't. They just keep pushing the narrative, you know.
Because sloppy, dirty, scary, uncomfortable news sells.
Well, sloppy, dirty, uncomfortable people buy
Yes.
sloppy, dirty, uncomfortable news.
And then
And then,
distribute it to the masses
and if
because
the,
I read it somewhere means
yeah.
it's true.
So I'll keep going back to my original point. It's us. We are the problem.
So let me ask then, if the article, if you were to write the same article, they're up 72%.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's use your 72% one.
72 over the last 2 years.
72 over the last 2 years. if we wrote, we all write. So I've learned I'm a writer too, but I like your writing. So I'm going to ask, if you wrote the same article, is it up 72%? Or, and because this doesn't sell, this is where I'm going to ask, is it 28% still to the better?
If I was writing, I could have still used the headline, hate crime reports surged during COVID. Right? Previous to COVID, this is the number that we were at. And maybe do a quick analysis of that number. Since COVID, it has moved up 27% in a year, 72% overall. And do a quick analysis of that. Or the article could be about that rise and what drove that rise based on what the analysis and what the numbers say. But to blatantly just put the title, hate crime reports surged during COVID, and then put those numbers 27% or 70%, to me, that's irresponsible journalism. That's irresponsible.
Well, and I have read so many different articles over the last 2.5 years. And you want to talk about irresponsible journalism, and we live in a world of spell check. We live in a world, right? I mean, many people many reporters that I'm seeing write the articles that I have had the leisure, I'll use leisure, of reading over the last 2.5 years. There are spelling errors, there are grammar errors, there are multiple articles mixed together, or like a sentence ends, it's the end of the article, and there's still like a sentence of another article there, like the editor missed it, like the journalist didn't start another page, like there are so many errors in it, like it has to be pumped out so fast, and whatever the narrative is has to be so quick that we don't even have time to review. It's just going, and then somebody on the desk is like, oh, I have a picture to match this one, and I have a picture to match this one, and I have a picture to match this one, and suddenly you've got the front, middle, and last page of the newspaper. Like that's where the irresponsible also sits with me, is we have to move it so fast we don't even have time to spell check.
Well, we don't, but like I said, data is just one aspect of understanding things. But like right now, I'm on StatsCan's page, and you can police reported hate crimes in Canada 2020, right? And then they just break down a highlight. I mean, there's lots of places you can go. One of the things you mentioned going to Google. I invite people, don't just get stuck on the first page of Google search. You have to really go deep into it, because I find too, a lot of the first couple of pages, there's a definite kind of a slant to one ideology. So
there's a reason for that. And I'm not going to support or not support Google, but I can support why it may be interpreted that way as well, because Google works like a spider. it reaches its legs out and it gets the food that's
Mhm.
actively moving.
Yeah.
Right.
So
If it is a
those
stale statement or a stale web page or a stale whatever that is not getting the feed, the spider
Yep.
doesn't want it. Right. The spider doesn't want to eat the fly that's been there for 15 days. It wants to eat the dead fly that's been there for 3. Right. I mean, we're the
Yeah.
same way, but that's the Google concept.
I
And that
agree
goes
with
with
that.
any search engine concept,
Yeah,
right?
but
You're the higher, the more active, the
this is
higher
where
it's
you
going
and
to
I
sit.
this is where you and I are going to disagree, because I think Google and Facebook, I like the example I used with The Economist. Why are you fact checking someone when they're presenting facts that is accepted? So to me, you still control the algorithms. You can still control how information is digested. I agree. If you got more people going to various sites, then this is why you have meta tags and all that. Those things are going to come up. But then why is it that it seems that conservative sites aren't getting the same respect? Because there's a lot of people going on those
That's fair.
sites.
That's fair. That's
So
fair.
that's why
Hmm.
I
I like your thought. You could
right.
disagree. I appreciate
Yeah.
the challenge of my perspective, the
Just not,
challenge
it's
of
not
my
even so much.
understanding. It was an invitation to look at it differently, and I
Well,
see it.
and it's not even so much a challenge. It's just that my understanding. You're still. I think there's a lot of validity to what you said, but I also think that there seems to be a concerted effort to squash conservative voices. I talk about Thomas Sowell a lot. Thomas Sowell was an economist. He's still alive. Thomas is 92. I don't know how much longer Thomas is going to be around, but why don't you know Thomas Sowell? Why don't you know Walter Williams? Why don't you know
Yeah.
names like Shelby Steele? These are noted Black men, noted,
Mhm.
accomplished, not just an
High
economic,
level degree,
high level
multi
of
Ivy League colleges.
they have accomplished, but they hold a conservative view. Look what they do with Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court in the United
Hmm.
States. He's a sellout. He's an Uncle Tom. And anytime someone calls a Black man an Uncle Tom, it's a compliment. That says to me, you don't know what you're talking about and you never read the damn book.
Yep.
So
So I'm curious then. I mean, in the case of The Economist being fact checked by Facebook, sorry.
mhm,
I work in finance, right?
mhm,
I
mhm.
went to school to be in the position that I'm in. I did do that. I had to learn generally accepted accounting principles, right? You've done it too, right? We've managed businesses. If you don't know the gap, you don't know how to do what you're doing. You need at least the basis of the gap.
At least a
And
bit.
so I love and I laugh when I hear, mind the gap. We're not getting on a subway, but we have to apply generally accepted accounting principles to the work that we do, because if it is not generally accepted, we must validate why something looks or appears or acts differently.
Right.
And provide the information for it so that when the auditor comes along, you can at least explain what you did and accept that there might have been a better option. However, you apply the gap to everything that you do in the finance world, or specifically within accounting.
Mhm.
Um, I'm interested. So this is where I was going with this is maybe I just need to drop some gap principles into some of my different social media feeds to see
Yeah.
how long it takes
Yes.
to have or to be fact checked by others who don't necessarily know or understand how generally accepted accounting principles work.
This is
Mind the
why
gap.
this is why I like Thomas. Thomas takes certain economic principles and applies it to other aspects of life. Because at the end of the day, it's all about economics, my friends.
Well, for sure.
We're
I
sitting
mean,
there. You
we're
went to school to learn a business and accounting. Why? So you can make money and take care of yourself and your family. And
yeah.
it all ties, but it's not the only thing that
No.
drives life. It's not the only thing that drives decisions, but it has a big part. And this is why I like his approach.
Well, here's a generally accepted accounting principle that goes across every area from economics to business to home to everything. If the expenses supersede the revenue, you will be in a deficit. And we can apply that to spirituality, to government, to
Everything,
everything. If
every
your expenses are higher than your revenue, if you're putting out more than you're getting in, you're going to be in a deficit.
and
That's the
yet
basic.
and yet our government practices the opposite.
Oh, we keep putting out more and think we're going to get more. You don't breed more by spending more. No, this is a
Mm,
complicated topic.
isn't it? No, it's not.
It's not. It's not. Absolutely, it's not.
It's not.
People make it complicated. If you are spending more than you have nothing.
You have nothing.
You are buying on credit.
Here's how capitalism works. I have a service.
And I have a service.
And I'm positioning my service to you. And you're going, I see the value in that. I see how that value will affect my life in a positive way. How much
Let
are you
me
asking
invest
for your
in my
service?
life and invest in your service for my life.
You're willing to take money out of your pocket to give to me in exchange for what I'm offering.
For a product or a service.
That's a free market. That's capitalism at this basic rudimentary level. That's it. It's really not that complicated. Economics is really not that complicated. Consumer price index is really, we're lazy. We are lazy. We don't.
And you and I were talking about consumer price index before, and I mean, people, right? And I said this just goes over so many people's heads. Like, I remember the very first time I heard KPI, and I was studying, right? I'm like, where the hell did I read the acronym for KPI? It's an acronym because it is spelled out as an acronym, KPI. Right. Well, then through that learning, right? Through that principle, through that studying, your key performance indicators, apply those to every aspect of your life. What indicators in what you do are your key performance indicators that tell you you're doing good?
Yeah,
you're doing the right thing, right? We could keep like we so many financial terms in regular life, and it is bizarre to me that people don't understand finances. We use these terms everywhere.
Just off of Canada's Stats Canada's page again, the consumer price index as of January this year is up 8.1, and the overall average is up since 2021 3.4, right? And once again, consumer price index looks at things like clothing and footwear and basic services that you buy, transportation, health, and all these things. It takes into account education. It's basically the products that we use every day and seeing the consumer confidence in it, whether they're spending money on it or not. And it's true, a lot of our economic beliefs is based on confidence. If people are confident, they'll spend more. If they're not, they're going to. And right now, people's confidence are low. Why? They're seeing the price of food skyrocketing, but yet their salaries are going down or stuck.
Or hovering.
One of the news headlines that I read was where are all the workers out of COVID?
Yes, I saw that one. Right?
Yep. We could sit here and talk about it just from a high level, 35,000 feet level, but there's probably other reasons as well. I love listening to the Biden administration talking about all these new jobs they're creating. Are you creating new jobs, or are those just the jobs that are coming back online because of COVID? Is hate crime on the rise really, or is it because we had a virus that came out of China? And when you use the word China in this landscape of woke, now it's hate or racism. Now there are people out there who are being shouted, go back to China and all this stuff. But to me, that's still not an indication of the majority of people. That's just idiots that are ignorant. And a lot of times people need to use these things as a way to, it justifies their anger. It just hurt people, hurt other people.
And I ask this question all the time. Who hurt you in your past? I never want an answer, right? This is like internalize the question. Who hurt you in your past to have you behave the way you do today?
To behave that way, because the majority of people, at least in my circle, don't behave that way.
Agreed.
And I don't believe the majority of good apples behave that way.
And the statement I grew up with, and because I would have these conversations as a kid, right? The bad apples, the good apples, the in-between apples who don't really know what apple they want to be. And I remember my mom saying, and I'm sure it came from her mom, and this probably passes generations, but don't let a bad apple spoil the bunch.
Yeah, you're supposed to remove it, not the whole bunch.
That's right. Then it's not the whole bag. That's garbage. You're just taking out one.
I want to try this on you. I'm going to just read out some of these bullet points and tell me this is an actual politician from back in the day. Believe in cutting taxes, believed in free trade, or was in favor of free trade. Definitely anti-communist. Excuse me. appointed one justice who vetoed or voted against Roe versus Wade. It was definitely against abortion, believed in the rule of law, slow on civil rights, fiscal responsibility, pro-military, tough on tough on unions, believed in reforming welfare, didn't believe in this welfare state that we have, and was pro oil and gas.
American or Canadian?
American.
Trump.
JFK.
Well, okay. I was going, you said in the past, and I
Yeah.
didn't go far enough back.
No, that's
yes.
okay. But a lot of time, today, if JFK was running, the woke would eat him alive.
Fucking rights they would.
They would eat him alive. In 1968, the Liberal platform here in Canada, well, the Red Book, and they used that same strategy again in 93. And in 68, remember? Liberal, well, you may not remember, that's the first Trudeau. Believed in a just society, multiculturalism, bilingualism, Charter of Rights, wanted to reorganize the government. That was just the highlights of the platform.
You know, and I have some problems here, specifically with this individual, not necessarily who he is, but with this individual who would have been sitting across the aisle in the House. It's 1968.
And he's sitting across one of yours. Tommy Douglas was the NDP leader. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so this is interesting because, I mean, Tommy Douglas, everybody is like, oh, the West won with Tommy Douglas, Medicare, Tommy Douglas, all these other things. Tommy Douglas, I mean, in the city that I'm in, there's a school named after him. He's a pretty renowned individual. I mean, for a variety of reasons that may not be directly related to politics.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, he is PET, right? I like to call him Mr. Pet, is sitting across. He's got, you know, our current Governor General Mary is within his group of people at this point anyway in his life and circle and what she represented. Nonetheless, he is sitting across the green carpet from his rival, the two biggest parties at that time in Canada, right? He is sitting across the green carpet of a beautiful building that, you know, we don't get to see the inside of, that we pay taxes on. That all aside. And the 60s scoop is happening in Canada at that time. And he was a politician at that time. And he's pushing the multicultural platform.
Yeah.
He was very incredibly the same color as I am. Visually, right? I mean, I don't, race is a political thing. I agree. But he wants to push the multicultural platform. And yet he's in an environment where he had all the input to, you know, and support of a party to end what was going on in the 60s.
And chose not to take advantage of it. Multiculturalism, and then the way I understood it from what Trudeau and the Liberals were pushing, was to push to not be so pro-European in immigration and to open up to others.
So
when people talked about immigration back in the day, they failed to realize the majority of people that migrated to Canada, particularly up until the 70s, were mostly Europeans, followed closely, I believe, by a lot of West Indians that came here. A lot of West Indians either went to the United States, they went to England, or they came to Canada. So I'm not putting, I didn't bring that up to slant one way or the other. It's just like, this is what they were thinking, at least from a liberal standpoint in 68.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to, I did mean to jump on that, but that is totally a conversation for a different day. But it just sounds,
why I bring it up is because there's nothing new under the sun.
No.
There's nothing new under the sun. And we keep acting like these things are new. And now, you know, I'm watching, you know, at least it's going to affect us eventually, but what's going on in the States at the southern border? Are you telling me that everyone that's coming up there are refugees? Everyone. So how do you know who's a real refugee or not? So is either we sit down and say, what are we really doing? Are we really looking to redefine our humanity and what we value? Or are we just throwing gas bombs at the wall of fire and thinking it's somehow going to stop the fire? All we're doing is inflaming things. We're having the wrong conversations. because I don't believe everyone coming up there are refugees. I
Mhm.
know the cartels are using, there's a lot of human trafficking going on. That why is that such a hard concept to hold? There's a poem I might want to, I'm going to try and make sure we stay within the 90 minutes. So we got about
We got about
11
10.
minutes.
Yep.
Abortion. Not every abortion is a woman's life that's in danger, or she was sexually abused. We're acting like that's the norm. Those are the exceptions. And then we broad stroke it over everything.
Mhm.
So now a woman's health, the right for her own health is in danger. Where? It's the same thing, you know, some of these black leaders now want Canada to apologize so we can eradicate systemic racism. Where? We're talking today.
Mhm.
I'm talking today. They're talking in the past like it's still happening today. Give me one institution that's stopping anyone. Are there idiots in some of those institutions? Definitely.
Absolutely.
Why do we need to pass transgender laws? We have a law. It's called our Bill of Rights, Charter of Rights in
Yeah.
our Constitution that says everyone is welcomed.
Mhm.
Why are we not implementing that? So when I hear conservatives, particularly in the States, talking about the Constitution is under attack, I've been saying that for a couple of years,
Mhm.
even before COVID. I don't know if the constitutions of these lands matter anymore. The laws are in place, and yet. Now, why was Kennedy slow on civil rights? Because he knew it was a topic that it was a bomb.
Mhm.
But he wasn't the one that did a lot of the heavy lifting. The one before him, Eisenhower, was the one that pushed to get the civil rights to where it is.
Mhm.
Johnson signed it. Kennedy supported it, but he
Yeah.
wanted a slow progress. Because why? When I dug into some of the articles from the past about Kennedy, many of the reporters back in the day say he's actually a conservative, not a Democrat. If you to actually look at Ronald Reagan's platform and what he believed in, you would agree with 90% of what he says. But the media made him out. He's this actor, he doesn't know anything. Reagan was a brilliant speaker. And I actually, when I listened to some of his speech, I was like really impressed with him.
He is an interesting one to listen to.
He's
I
been a
do.
very interesting man, and he knew
Yeah.
a lot. And I think we discredit him. And all I know is under Reagan, America rose out of the prominence of the not feeling good about themselves, and America started feeling good again. You don't have to agree with it. That's what happened,
Mhm.
right? You don't have to like Stephen Harper, but Canada was in a better economic
God, was
standing
it
and position in the
ever?
world than she is today.
Absolutely
You don't have
agree.
to like him, but the
You
facts
have to
are
admit
the
the facts.
facts. And
Mhm.
that's the thing with today's world. The facts don't seem to matter. I don't care
Because
which
the
party's in power. All I know is, are you doing what you're supposed to be? One thing I agreed with I think it was Trudeau. We need to reorganize government. We need to reorganize government. Government has gotten too big. This is why the problem in the States is hitting people in the face.
Mhm.
You don't have control over your life. The
Yep.
states are the ones that are supposed to have the power. And what the Supreme Court did when they overturned Roe versus Wade is they're saying it's not that abortion isn't right or legal, but this belongs in the hands of the people
And the people where they live,
and the people where they live.
which in the context of use, they turned it back to the state.
So now they lump, oh, a woman doesn't have a right over her own physical health. Bullshit. That's a lie.
It's
That's
the
grandstanding.
federal government doesn't have the right to tell you what you
Exactly.
can do with your body because you are the voice. And I mean, the Americans, seriously, their bills, their everything. The government is made of the people, not of the people in the government.
Now, we're not a republic, we're a parliamentary-based system, but it's
Yes.
the same thing. But people have a say. This is why we elect officials
Mhm.
to represent the people. And the abortion issue is alive and well and big here in Canada as well. It's
Absolutely.
big in Canada. I don't know any women that are being denied health care.
And you have an interesting, and I want to,
Overall,
yes, we have like minutes here, but when we can bring this up in a different time or go deeper into it in a different time. In Canada today, if a younger adult female, younger, I'm not using an age specific because I don't have the facts in front of me, but I know that because they don't exist, because it is a gray area that we don't want to make rules about, because that's what our federal government doesn't want to do in this area.
Right.
If a young, mature, adult, consenting female decides at a younger age that she does not want to have children, she has to, like, there's so many ways to go through, so many hoops, so many rings of fire to donate her eggs. To like, I don't want children, so donate eggs and do a tubulectomy. Just I never want to have kids. I have no desire to have kids. They have to fight for it.
Right.
Because the government says you may change your mind one day. Right. The doctors are saying it. The doctors get their money from our governments because of Tommy Douglas. Healthcare is free. So there's good and bad in that mix, and that's not the point I'm getting at. The point I'm getting at is in that exact statement, the Roe versus Wade, and they turned it back to the state because the people get to choose. In this, and you said abortion in Canada is alive and well, this falls into a similar category. We have an individual, I know an individual who is old enough to know and young enough to make, still have all of that stuff happen, and yet she is going to hit wall after wall after wall after wall because of what if.
Yeah.
Well, you know
and
what?
All I know is this. I look at the government's involvement, and I'm not one of these people believe that the government's out there. There's some kind of conspiracy theory that no, and they're trying to harm us. I believe they have good intentions, but good intentions are one thing. The policies that come from these good intentions, are they well researched? Are they based on facts? And then even once you implement them, if they're not working, instead of doubling down on them, stop them.
Mm-hmm.
So when Kennedy talked about wanting to reform welfare, I'm on board with that. I'm still on board with that today. Because you're talking about, the government. The government has control over welfare.
Yes.
How's that working? It is making more people dependent on the state. So communism is coming into play. You have more people dependent on the government. This is why, when Johnson rolled out the Great Society Act and and all this welfare money was available to women. So all they did was replace the man in the home with the government, right? So, so I said, when Black Lives Matter talk about Black lives, you should be looking at things like that, not slavery. Slavery had nothing to do with that. Are we still living the hangovers of slavery?
Sure. Some of it.
It's like when you wake up with a hangover first thing in the morning, oh my God, it hurts. Oh my God, I'll never drink again, never again. But then by 1, 2 o'clock, you're still foggy, but you're starting to feel better. That's where we are with slavery. I'm not fool. I'm not going to sit here and say slavery is what's the problem. Right. I want to share a poem with you that ties into
it. Let's wrap up with that.
When I post this, I have to go back and listen and pull out the points. What the hell did we talk about? We seem to talk about a lot of stuff today.
Yes.
Anyway, this piece is called Nothing New Under the Sun.
Okay.
How dare you look to me for hope, was the cry of a young one before the nations. Is hope the refuge for troubled minds and heavy hearts? Lost in a sea of politicized words that only inspires division, as well-tailored suits spin intentions of civil compliance with the rhetoric of righteousness as a weapon of conformity, while many are asleep at the wheel, caught in a hypnotic trance, forsaking the common sense afforded by their own experiences. So what are we speaking of? The call to ban guns, defund the police, be soft on crime, as elected ones posture to void rights while guarded with guns? Yes, the Glock kills, but isn't it the finger on the trigger on trial? As serve and protect now smeared, disrespected in a walk of shame, yet 911 is a call when homes and businesses fall prey to outlaws. But the oath to protect falls short as good cops protect bad apples. Freedom of information and body cam suppressed when needed the most, as the internal investigates itself to protect the badge that seems to be above the law. What are we speaking of? Colonization of European whiteness, the reason for all that ills, as the ghost of segregation and Jim Crow seems to be taking a curtain call. It appears skin color has jumped the line with no regard for character, as pigmentation is the new currency in the fight for civil prosperity. The right to pursue happiness and liberty, a dream that does not matter, as those whose phoenix rose out of the ashes, now convinced their kinship, the world of systemic racism will rage against their ascension to dignity. What are we speaking of? Are we not all people of color? Yet the voice of prejudice cries white privilege. The ritual of policing, now on a safari hunting the prized and rare Black man, while in the hood many Black lives killed by the hands that rock the cradle. Sticks and stones can break bones, as words now used in this wave of illusion. Ignorance may hurt feelings, but who's stopping your exodus to greatness? What are we speaking of? As the courts return to the states the right to choose or the right to kill. Yet what grows in the wound is debated. Is it human or just a stew of cells? Impregnation by violation should always be addressed with empathy's choice. But my body, my choice hastens to judge as redemption shields their judgment. The Black population seems forever stuck as it flounders for its own acceptance. Yet 20 million spirits returned unwrapped to the unknown since Roe versus Wade. What are we talking about? What am I talking about? Let this prose serve as an invitation with no violence against the truth. For there are three sides to truth, yours, mine, and the universe. Life is beyond Black or white and holds many shades of gray. The practice of pointing fingers and shouting matches only stifles conversations. Time is the great agent of change that requires patience and heavy lifting. So here I stand under the sun shaking my head, for there's nothing new under her rays. Vision forward, but do not ignore the voices of the past that scream from exile. Otherwise, the path will continue to be paved with the intention of suffering. Too many have preconceived ideas and conclusions thinking they know best. Stop for a second. No, really stop for a second and breathe. Really breathe to open up new prospects. It is okay to admit history cannot be undone as we mourn the past. And it's not an admission of surrender or giving up on the fight. But maybe it's an avenue to focus our love into a meaningful effort where hope becomes a verb for making life better for the living. I've drawn a line in the sand of perception that circles back to the mob. Let ye without sin be the Lord of the manor over our wretched sinners. I care not who is right or who is wrong, but that's the beauty of freedom. To democracy or not democracy, one will be adopted by those who praise. The adventure continues as our legacy is written forward in the book of life. I am a citizen of humanity. I love humans, for they make up my humanity. Now, do I like you? Let's first start with a cup of Black coffee and maybe a chat. End of poem.
I love it. Start to finish. I had a few moments of very Martin Luther King there, the masses and the speaking and the whatever, and then I'm out of coffee. But you know what? I am the same, and I've had many conversations. I'm going to circle really quickly here. When somebody says I need to talk, I say, take a walk with me, grab your coffee.
Grab a coffee.
I will happily listen, but if we need to talk, let's take it outside, let's have a coffee, and let's just be.
Yeah, I agree. And, it was so great having Jenny on the last couple of episodes. And, whether or not we get another person for this month, because we have one more taping later this month. You and I'll talk about that. It would be nice to get some other voices. I'd love to get a conservative voice to come on and pick their brain, he or she. I would love to get a transgender person that would be willing to come on and talk about the topics of the day. You know, I have some Black friends in Kelowna that would love to do this show. I'd love to talk about the Black issue in the world here in Canada, because I am one of that don't believe Black people are struggling. The ones that are struggling are struggling because they want to. Yeah, I said it. There's too many examples of people succeeding and doing great things that we're not hearing about. I'm not buying the systemic racism nonsense. I'm not buying a lot of this hate that's being pushed on our throats, whether it's through race or gender or abortion or whatever it is. There's not enough understanding of these topics, and people are formulating ideas based on what? Based on what? But then again, that's the beauty of freedom, isn't it? They don't have to do it the way I think, just like I don't have to do it the way they think. But can we sit down and talk? And like my friend Randall and I say, have a coffee and a chat, because it's only through talking, communication, open, putting your perception aside, that you can understand. And maybe then, if someone makes an argument that you really vibe with, you might go away and do some of your own research and go, you know what, Randall? Yeah, I'm not changing my viewpoint. Thank you for that, because what you said triggered something in me that said I wanted to know more. And that's the whole point. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. At the end of the day, we're all doing this together. Right, wrong, good, bad, fighting, not fighting. Who are we doing it with? We're not doing it with the lions or the giraffes. We're doing it with each other. And they feel whatever we decide. This is why, you know, global warming, climate change. Are we really surprised at how we treat the planet? Look how we treat each other.
Yep.
The way we treat each other is a reflection of how we treat this planet. So maybe, maybe the invitation from all this craziness is the fact that we want to reform, we want to change, we want not to reform, we want to transform.
Transform, yeah.
Right? We're not going to hell in a handbasket.
Well,
maybe we're
on
ready.
Our pathway, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Well, if we do, we'll have a party. Hat and sunglasses day in hell. Welcome to.
And the coffee's always hot.
Well, let's go there, because the coffee will always be hot. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, but you know what? I like the winter. So when can hell freeze over? And then I will happily join you there with a hot coffee.
So let's do this. We will vacation in hell in the winter months and come back.
Oh, dear Persephone. Dear Persephone.
All I know is I better have enough good gold coins to pay the boatmen on the river Styx to cross me over.
You know,
if you don't understand that reference, read a damn book, people.
Because if you don't know how to cross the boat, or how to get on the boat to cross the river, you do need to go back and read.
Then you do need to go back to read. But anyway, my friend.
Yes, that is episode 6. This is Where's the Balance? I am Randall Keays. I'm taking this exit because Rawle brought in the intro. I am here with my co-host, my friend, my brother in arms and in life, Rawle James. We are your combined co-host. Where's the Balance? It is not a debate. It is a discussion and a conversation. And the conversation continues when we come back in a couple of weeks with or without another guest. There's still time to tell, and you know what, we always start the show with kind of an idea we want to talk about, but as you heard and watched today, the topics flow, and it's all about the flow, and we go different places. We'll come back around, and if we don't cover it in this episode, we'll maybe cover it in the next one, which means you do have to come back and listen, because if it intrigued you, if it interests you, you are invited to continue listening. You are also invited to send us your feedback, send us your comments, send us your questions, and if you really disagree with either one of us, we're always interested in having a conversation with you too. As I started this exit, I am Randall, this is Rawle, and episode 6 of Where's the Balance?